I'm scared. I'm scared to put myself out there. I'm scared to be fully seen. I'm scared to be fully responsible for the magnificence of my life. And I think that that was such a powerful lesson, because when you are on your deathbed and you realize, oh no, I screwed up, I didn't do the things I was supposed to do, the idea that you were scared to do those things seems absolutely silly. You know, I think the thing that's become so important to me over the years is to have joy now, to be happy now. And there's no prerequisite to be happy and to love your life right now. And if there's one thing that I've just learned over and over and over, it's stop waiting, right? Back to our original point of this whole discussion. Stop waiting to do the thing. Stop waiting to take the course. Stop waiting to go on the trip. Stop waiting to tell the person you love them. Just do the thing now. And most importantly, be happy now. Like, give yourself permission. And it's one of the largest regrets that people report on their deathbed is that they didn't allow themselves to be happy.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast with your host, Leigh Brandon. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and a warm review. And now, here is Leigh, the Radical Health Rebel, with this week's podcast.
Vanessa Lambert, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
So excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this episode. And this episode is entitled Stop Waiting, Another Day is Not Guaranteed, with Vanessa Lambert. If you are someone who tends to put things off and procrastinate, or you assume that tomorrow is just another day and you can put things off until then, well, how do you know that you'll definitely see tomorrow? Vanessa Lambert is here to share with you why you can't guarantee that you will see another day, and therefore why you must make the most of the life that you have every day, and how to ensure that you do just that. So Vanessa, to kick things off, would you share with the audience a little bit about you, your upbringing, your educational background, and your career to date?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Northern California. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Northern California, you know, in the past, you know, California's changed a bit in the last few years, but as I was growing up, it was definitely more of a counterculture kind of boho, you know, just a very different cornucopia of energy than a lot of the rest of the states. So I feel really honored and privileged to have grown up there in that time. And I think what I love about Northern California, especially as I was growing up, is its kind of rebellious spirit. It's always had sort of that, you know, counterculture, or, you know, people going and living off the grid and just sort of doing, you've got Haight-Ashbury, you've got San Francisco, you've just got all of this energy that was just, you know, very unique and creative. And so I think that had a huge imprint on me as a person, and definitely created a really unique, I would say, bedrock for me to kind of sprout from. So that's where I grew up. I actually went to college in Northern California as well, at a university called Chico State, which folks out there might know. It's been, you know, kind of known to be a party school, but I actually at that time, you know, was already engaged to be married. So I didn't really take advantage too much of the party scene. And I got my degree in media design with a focus in media arts. So really film and TV and all the stuff that we're up to, Leigh. You can, I think you got, isn't your degree in the same thing?
Mine was in management, actually.
Oh, management. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was, for some reason I had it as communications, but so yeah, and graduated magna cum laude, you know, graduated with honors, did the whole sort of traditional education, you know, track for a bit. But I think the really interesting education came for me later on when I enrolled in this year-long internship in the Berkeley Psychic Institute method. And so this is kind of another little point on the timeline of my life education-wise, because back to Northern California being this sort of counterculture place, they have this establishment called the Berkeley Psychic Institute method, or the Berkeley Psychic Institute, and they have a specific method that you train in to kind of elicit a deeper connection with your psychic powers. So it's a very unique, you know, methodology, but it was really interesting because what it did is really just tap me more into my intuitive force, my psychic energy, kind of just helps you realize how many senses are turned down. And so it kind of helps you turn up these extrasensory pieces of yourself that maybe you haven't explored. So that was a really unique piece of my education. And from there, you know, I've done all kinds of different trainings. I was a strength and conditioning coach and worked for, you know, competed in CrossFit and worked in gyms and, you know, have a whole kind of health and wellness background as well. My husband and I founded Be the Wellness, our first company that was really predicated on helping people and more, you know, more of those fundamental fitness and wellness modalities. And then, of course, you know, as I've grown up and branched out, I started Starseed Collective, which is the more esoteric teachings and kind of the more Kundalini yoga and Akashic records. And so there's sort of like these two pieces of my background career-wise, one that's more kind of rooted in the fundamentals of health and wellness, and this other side that's a little bit more in the spiritual realm, you could say. So that's that's the nutshell, a quick nutshell of where, you know, kind of my growing up and where I'm at today.
Nice. So I guess with your psychic background, you actually know what questions I'm going to ask already.
Exactly. You're going to ask me why we shouldn't wait another day. Yeah, you know, and it's really interesting because the psychic background is different than the Akashic kind of lean that I've taken that training. And the psychic is, you know, when you learn about psychic skills and really understanding that, a lot of that is focused on just pure psychic energy. The cool thing about the Akashic records is it's more about tuning into your extrasensory ability and then using that psychic energy to support it. So it's a little bit different than me like creeping into your brain and being like, what's in there, Leigh? I can see it.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to getting into that in a bit more detail. What led you down the kind of health and fitness path? Was there something that particularly got you started with that?
You know, I think I just kind of came up in it naturally. My mom actually worked in a gym when I was growing up. So we spent a lot of time after school at the gym. You know, we would just be there while she would be finishing up her work hours. So I think I got this imprint of just health and fitness. Obviously, that was like late 80s, early 90s. So it was a different fitness vibe. And in fact, I remember, you know, the guys would be playing racquetball and they would have their pitcher of beer like outside the racquetball court. So it was kind of a different ethos for fitness back then. But I think it was just naturally imprinted in me. And my mom and my dad actually always had a deep interest and also really instilled a lot of practices that were focused around nutrition. We weren't really allowed to eat like sugar and those kinds of things growing up. They were pretty strict around how they nourished us. So I think it was really imprinted from a very young age. And I just kind of came into it naturally. I was a gymnast when I was really young. And, you know, the joke is that I got my first coaching job when I was 9 years old because I was just, you know, I was a pretty gifted gymnast at a young age. And so the coaches asked if I would start teaching the younger kids that were like 4, 5, and 6. So that was kind of my first foray into coaching. And it just feels like I've just consistently been in the rooms where I've taken on that identity and that role. And it's just, you know, it's kind of like it chose me.
Mm-hmm. And what about the more esoteric type education? How did you get into that?
You know, I think it was really interesting because it was sort of part and parcel. Like I had the wellness background and the fitness and that going on. Meanwhile, again, back to being from Northern California, you know, there's a lot of hippies there. So you're just interacting with a lot of kind of different esoteric modalities and, you know, lifestyles. And so I got certified to do Reiki when I was like 15, 16 years old. You know, my friends' parents had labyrinths on their property. Obviously we were in the Emerald Triangle. So there's a lot of marijuana. There's a lot of psychedelics. It's just there. It's just part of the fabric of life. So I think that I kind of had that again, sort of naturally in my formative years. And then, you know, as I started to develop into my own unique way that I worked with it, that's when I really went into the Berkeley Psychic Institute method and started kind of figuring out what it all meant to me. But all of these things were sort of happening at the same time. And I think what happens really, you know, quite naturally is that when you're in the health and wellness world, you eventually hit that space with people where you're like, okay, I've given you the exercise, I've given you the perfect diet, I've given you all of the information you could possibly need to make the best choices for you to be healthy. Yet somehow you're still not able to cross through that threshold to embody those teachings. And so for me, that was just where the mindset, the spirituality just had to come in and start to interplay with the rest of the teachings. And so I think it's just kind of a natural progression for us in this wellness world to eventually just go, all right, there's a piece missing here. How do I bring that in to take people across the finish line?
Yeah, I've certainly followed almost an exact same path myself, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like you and I kind of had this when our little preliminary chat. We have a lot in common around this.
Yeah, for sure. So you had a deep experience when you were in your early 30s that really impacted your relationship to time and to not putting things off. Can you share with the audience that experience and how that influenced the way in which you live your life?
Yeah, it's such a pivotal time, I think, on my timeline. And, quite literally had a ruptured appendix and went in, got the surgery, thought I was all good. A year later, which is pretty much unheard of in the medical community. In fact, my doctors were like flabbergasted by this timeline. Essentially, I had, just a low level recurring infection that wasn't resolved from that ruptured appendix that essentially seeded, like a bunch of abscess in my stomach. And I essentially just woke up one morning almost septic. And I just all of a sudden, at the time, my husband and I had just moved to LA. So he was still splitting time in Northern California. So he was out of town and we shared a house with our friends at the time. And I woke up my friend and I was like, take me to the hospital. I'm dying. And I just quite literally understood that I was dying. And, I got to the hospital and it turned out I had a roaring infection and some pretty complicated abscesses to access and to deal with. So I was in the hospital for almost a month. And during that time, I really, really got very, very clear on this time thing. Especially I was in my early 30s. I think you just think you have so much time left. And I just remember this being one of the deepest lessons that I came away through that time was just, you never know how much time you're going to be here on planet Earth. And all of the things that I'd put off, all of the things maybe I'd felt insecure to do or not well equipped enough to do, or just, maybe even just a little bit lazy. I just all of a sudden realized oh my God, I'm going to die. And I didn't do any of these things that I know in my heart I was meant to do while I was here on planet Earth. And I think that was just such a powerful awakening. And almost once I got that download and I got that message so clearly, that's when my health started recovering and I started actually coming back out and there was a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So for me, I feel like that was the lesson for me. It was like, we're going to give this one to you powerfully so you understand that time is not guaranteed. And as soon as I really understood that and understood the gravity of how much time I'd wasted not enacting on the things that I was meant to do here, that's when life started coming back in. And I honestly feel like I got a second chance.
It's amazing, isn't it? How wise the human body is, because, from what you're saying, what I'm getting from that is you was living your life in a way that, probably wasn't going in the right direction. And the only way that you would have actually taken the time out to realize that was what happened to you, because you couldn't continue going on doing what you were doing day in, day out. You needed something to stop you from doing that, for you to have the space and the time to actually give it some thought and to say, well, hang on a minute, what am I doing here? Is this really what I want?
Yeah. And I think there's a subtlety in this that I really want listeners to get, because on the surface, my life actually looked really wonderful, and it looked like I actually was tracking in a beautiful direction. But what I knew internally is that I wasn't giving it 100%, that there were certain places and spaces that I was kind of putting off, or I wasn't giving my full attention or full respect to. And so, from the outside view, it didn't look particularly like I was wasting time, but I knew. And that's what I want people to understand, is that inside of yourself whether you're giving it your all or not. And that, I think, is the nuance that's really important, because you'll actually get a lot of agreement from other people of like, wow, you're doing so great, or you're up to these big things, or maybe you even have an amazing career that everybody else around you is looking at going, are you crazy? This, like, you're nailing it, like you're crushing life. But you inside know you're not living up to that thing that you're meant to do, or you're not living up to the fullest potential of what you're supposed to do with your life. And I think that was the big takeaway for me, is that, like, I can't hide from me. I know the truth, and I know what I should be up to. And if I'm not giving that 100%, I'm out of integrity with myself.
Yeah. And again, what I'm taking away from what you've just said there is just to highlight the amazing thing that life is, and how short the opportunity is that we get to absolutely squeeze every little last piece out of it. It's very easy to waste this experience that we have. I was going to say this body, but it's more than just having a body, right? It would be so easy to waste this opportunity that we have to create something amazing with this experience that we have. And I guess we see it a lot in other people, right? We see it in a lot of people that, they go through life and it gets to the end and they just wish they'd done so many things, and they were either too frightened to, or, as you're alluding to, they just weren't really pushing themselves enough to make the most of this opportunity.
And I think the part you said about being too frightened was exactly it. That was the crux of it for me, is that I just was like, I'm scared. I'm scared to put myself out there. I'm scared to be fully seen. I'm scared to be fully responsible for the magnificence of my life. And I think that was such a powerful lesson, because when you are on your deathbed and you realize, oh no, I screwed up, I didn't do the things I was supposed to do, the idea that you were scared to do those things seems absolutely silly. It seems, and I was so embarrassed and disappointed in myself. And I was like, oh my gosh, I let, my worry about not being cool enough or looking good enough or doing it the right way, or all those little stories we tell ourselves, I let that get in the way of fulfilling on my destiny. And now I'm going to die. And like, there was so much regret. I was so devastated and disappointed. And I just couldn't believe that I did that to myself. And, I felt like that was literally, looking back, a snapshot of how I would feel on my deathbed at 80 or 90 or however many, given years I get on this planet. And so I feel like it was such a blessing to actually have that experience in a deep, meaningful way. It was like, this is where you're going to be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whenever you pass, if you don't remedy this now.
So you had this incident, or incidents, there's more than one. How did that influence the way in which you then tackled life?
I think that I just went at it with much more vigor. It was just like, if there is something in my heart, if there's something in my soul, I'm just not going to let those little excuses or those stories get in the way. Like, they don't get a say anymore. They don't get the voting rights that they once got. And I think that it was just, once I got that clarity and I really identified those voices or those like frequencies that would get in the way, then it made it much more easy to just kind of be like, yeah, delete. You don't get a say anymore. And I think I just became a little bit more disciplined, honestly, not even just in my daily schedule, but in my thoughts. And I think that that's the most important thing, is that, I stopped entertaining those thoughts that were not helpful for me. And I started looking for ways that, okay, if I'm having these thoughts, what is the engine that is fueling these thoughts? And how can I cut the power to those engines? Like, how can I actually decrease the energy that's going to those types of thought forms and increase the energy to the types of thought forms that are more productive and supportive of who I want to become?
It's amazing, isn't it? We can go through these great challenges in life. Yours, I guess it was potentially life-threatening. And, you can be lying in hospital in a lot of pain, feeling really sorry for yourself. But looking back, you realize, wow, what a blessing that experience was.
Oh my gosh, the biggest blessing. And, I always, I kind of joked, but in a way I feel this is really true. I would joke that, oh, when I died, because it was such a deep death, almost of the ego, I don't know, like that term or that idea, it's like the closest thing I could probably reference to make, give us a sense of it. But it was like, there was such a death of these pieces of me that were holding back. And when I look back at that, it was almost like I really was born into a new space of myself. And I came out of that experience brand new in a way. And, there's all kinds of interesting ideas around this. People talk about you actually can be in the same body. We could just kind of go into like a little fun wormhole with this, but people actually talk about that you could be in the same body, but a different soul, like a different part of your soul could drop in. And it almost is like you are a new embodiment of your soul at that point. And when I heard that idea, I was like, I feel like that's what happened to me. It was almost like a brand new version of Vanessa dropped into the physical form. And I was just different from then on.
Yeah. As you were speaking, I was actually envisioning you wearing a load of masks. And as you're lying in the hospital, these masks are just dissolving.
Totally.
So it's almost like a facade, right? You just got rid of the facade.
Exactly. I just got real and just like, this is me. And I actually really love myself and I'm really proud of myself. And I don't need to like hide behind anything anymore. It's okay if people see me, even if they don't like me, even if they, whatever, that doesn't even matter anymore. And I think I was obsessed with being liked. It was like, if someone didn't like me, that was just, I couldn't get around that. And that was such a huge blockage. And so once I just realized it's okay if someone doesn't like me, that's fine. You don't have to like everybody. That's totally, somebody's prerogative. That was just such a liberating experience for me because the point was I liked me. And that's all that really matters. That's all you can ever really reference is, do you like yourself? And if you like yourself, then, that's all you've got.
Absolutely. Yeah. But there's far too many people, sadly, who value what other people think of them. And it's, it's almost like, I almost see that like a disease, right? Because you're trying to run around and please everyone else. Well, then you're doing it at a cost to yourself. But if you're running around doing things because you love yourself, you're going to attract people anyway, right? And you're going to attract the right people rather than you're going to attract the wrong people, which is exactly what you're going to do if you're going to run around wearing all these masks and you're wearing a facade, right?
Yeah. And I just think that, ultimately it's so much energy. And I hear people say this all the time, like, I'm so tired. Like I want to do this thing, but I'm exhausted. And what you're speaking to is exactly why you're so exhausted, is that you're wearing all these masks or you're under this facade or you just, you're buried under all these stories and it's exhausting to carry all that around. So no wonder you don't have time to, start your new business or, write your blog or make that Instagram post or whatever it is, because you're so buried in the energy of everything you're carrying around.
Yeah. And you see that a lot in gay people when they come out, right? You see, you just see that the load has been lifted. They're so frightened to come out, but actually when they do, they're like, oh my God, this is so much better than I thought it would be, right?
That's a perfect example. And it really does come back because it's like in the end, what they're afraid of is other people's opinions, right? And then when they get really clear that this is who I am and I love me for me, and it's okay even if other people don't like me, like that doesn't actually influence how I feel about myself. you come back into that alignment and you just gain all of that force of your true soul self.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a pretty lengthy background in health and wellness, as we spoke about earlier, as well as strength and conditioning. And having worked with some of the best in the ancestral world, such as Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson, etc., but now you primarily teach Kundalini yoga and the Akashic records. Can you talk a little bit about these modalities and why they are the primary modalities that you work in today?
Yeah, I love talking about these, so I would love to. So the Akashic records I was introduced to when I did that year-long internship in the Berkeley Psychic Institute method. And at the time, the way that I was introduced to it was that you could access this kind of vault of information, this space that actually holds the records of everything that's ever happened to your soul. And if you think about it, it's like the hard drive of your soul. I mean, it really just has all of the data of everything that's happened to your soul. And in the way that we worked with it, we would actually go up into this specific kind of location in this records, in the vaults of this energy field. And you could actually connect with souls from the other side, or souls who had passed away. And so the specific teachings I got were really about understanding how thin the veil is and how it's actually not that difficult to access these other energy fields and people who may not be here with us in physical form. So that was kind of my first foray into the Akashic records, is like, okay, it's this energy field that has all this stuff, and you can work with other souls. You can tap into other energy fields. And, I got that imprint. Fast forward, and I sort of stopped working in the Akashic records for a while, kind of forgot about it. It was just sort of like one of these modalities that was sitting on the shelf, ready to be rediscovered later. Fast forward, I started doing Kundalini yoga around 10 years ago. Just as a student. And I remember I took my first class and I had no idea what Kundalini yoga is. And the teacher's talking about this snake that's at the base of your spine, and you're going to do these movements, and a snake's going to come up your spine. And I'm like, what is she talking about? And I just thought it was like super wacky modality. But, I'm in the class, so I go through it. But at the end of the class, I was like, wow, I feel pretty good. This was, kind of an interesting thing. So I started taking more Kundalini yoga in Los Angeles, and I was just really lucky to be there at a time where there were some incredible teachers, including my teacher, Guru Jagat, who I'm sure we'll talk about. But I just saw that this was a way where I could cut power to those negative thought forms, like we were talking before, and really enrich the positive current in my life and really promote the positive nature of myself. And so I really, found it to just be such a transformative practice for me personally. And I knew that I would eventually take the teacher training. I always just, like, from pretty early on in my practice, I knew it was a modality that I really wanted to understand deeper. And then in 2020, when everything happened, after about doing, Kundalini for about 8 years, I finally had the bandwidth and the space to do the teacher trainings because, our wellness business, which is mostly travel based, had completely shut down. So it opened up this clear corridor for me to just go all the way into the teaching trainings. And I took like 8 teacher trainings, in like a 18 to 2 year period. 18 months to 2 year period. So I just went all in. And what I saw was just that as I embodied these teachings even deeper, as I understood them and really brought more discipline and more devotion into my life with the Kundalini yoga, every single aspect of my life started changing. And that is from where we lived. We moved from Los Angeles to, being in the heart of Venice Beach and in the city, which, I loved. It was a beautiful time, but we moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is to me one of the most sacred places in the United States. It is absolutely an insanely beautiful location. And just, I can't even believe I live here. So, from quite literally physical changes in location to changes in my relationship with my husband. We started doing a devotional practice every morning together. then we started seeing all of these improvements in our company, in our business, and the way things were flowing in, and how much easier business was coming to us, and how much easier everything was happening. And then I just noticed my thought forms. All of a sudden I was like, wow, I think way better thoughts now. Like, they're just more beautiful. They're less negative. They're less critical. So it was just like every single aspect of my life started changing because of this Kundalini practice, and because of the devotional nature that I had come into relationship with it. And so, you know, kind of fast forward, that's sort of the container. And then a friend of mine mentioned the Akashic records at one point, and I was like, oh, the Akashic records, I haven't thought about those in years. You know, what's the deal? Remind me. And she was kind of talking to me about the Akashic records, and she said, I'm going to do this little weekend refresher course. Do you want to come in and do the training with me? And so I took this little weekend refresher course, and everything just started flooding in. And, you know, the Akashic records just came online even more powerfully than they had when I initially worked in them. And what I got was that the Kundalini yoga, having the container of this really powerful practice, actually allowed me to be able to hold the kind of frequencies where the Akashic records could open even more deeply. And I could really have a better understanding and a better access to that dimension. And so, you know, fast forward a little bit further down the timeline, the way that it works is when you work in the Akashic records, you use your teacher's prayer, and you use, you know, essentially like sound codes to open up the records. And I was we were actually in Northern California in our RV doing a little camping trip in the redwoods. And I just heard, you know, I heard a voice that said, pick up a pen. I picked up a pen, and I just channeled through, you know, straight in one shot, the prayer that they were giving me. And essentially that's like them saying, okay, now you're a teacher, and it's up to you to start teaching this modality to others, because you have your own almost access through these sound codes. So all of that to say, you know, both of these things just kind of came in, and they really have this, you know, intrinsic supportive nature to one another. And I feel like had I not really had that very powerful Kundalini practice, I wouldn't have been able to hold the Akashic records from a teaching standpoint.
Gotcha. So I'm guessing you don't do any kind of like strength and conditioning, personal training kind of work at all anymore?
I don't do it like in a front facing. Obviously we have our amazing gym in our garage, and we still train ourselves, and we do all of that, but we don't do anything front facing anymore. And, you know, we did it for a very long time. I mean, I feel like I've been working in some kind of strength and conditioning modality for like 20 years of our, you know, career span. So, my husband is, you know, the same. He kind of just got to the point where he has a few local clients here, but we don't actually run any forward facing programs online or do anything with strength and conditioning. And I feel like there's so many amazing coaches out there now that we're like, all right, planet Earth, you're good. Like there's plenty of people that are doing that, and doing that really in a powerful way. So it just became much more interesting for me to do the Kundalini yoga and the Akashic training, and really focus on the spiritual aspect of it.
So I'm just putting myself in the shoes of someone listening or watching this, who perhaps never heard of the Akashic records before, and they think, oh, that sounds really interesting. What if someone came to you to work with you with their Akashic records? What would the experience be like?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that you can work with me. One, you can just have a reading, and we can open up your Akashic records. And truly the way that looks is we open up your records, and we actually just see what the records want to bring in. I just had a session yesterday, you know, where we had the gentleman came in with a specific sort of idea of what he wanted to look at. Once we got into the records, they brought in a whole broadcast of other things that, you know, were really relevant and important for him to experience and hold, but wasn't necessarily the reason we went in. So we can do a reading where you can come in with certain ideas of maybe questions you have about your life, or the trajectory you're on, or career, or relationship, you know, a whole plethora of things that we can look at. But the Akashic records themselves might also just bring in, you know, really poignant present things for you to look at and consider. So that's one way. And then the other way that you can work with me is actually to learn how to actually work in the Akashic Records as a reader, either for other people or just for yourself. And I do a 4-month certification program, which really just takes you into the depths of all of the different ways that you can work with the Akashic Records. And the way that I like to explain it is that, the Akashic Records is almost like this umbrella that holds all these various modalities. So folks out there who are maybe familiar with Reiki, it's when you're in the Akashic Records, you can actually almost tune into the frequency of Reiki and almost download the Reiki energy and understand Reiki from the Akashic perspective. So you may not be someone who's trained in Reiki, but when you go into the records, they'll say to you, okay, guess what? We're going to give you Reiki, or you're going to give someone Reiki, or we're going to show you how to work with this energy. And what's cool about that is that, what do they say? If you only have a hammer, everything's a nail. So it's like, if you only have Reiki as a modality, then whatever you're up to or whoever you're working with, that's the tool you have. In the Akashic Records, it's like you get access to the whole, again, my favorite word, cornucopia of different modalities that you can work with. And I think that that's what I love about it so much, is that it's literally like everything's on the table at that point. And so you might have certain sound codes that come in. Like I've quite literally had the Akashic Records say to me, you need to make these specific sounds for this person. They need to hear these certain sound codes to help kind of fill in their aura with this different vibration that they're lacking. Or they'll say to the person, you need to start wearing these specific colors, because these colors are going to help kind of, again, bring in these sound currents or these frequencies that are lacking in your aura. You might have something come in, like an actual teacher or master or someone from your ancestral lineage that comes in with a specific teaching for you. And it's just like, I could go on for hours about the different things that can happen under the umbrella of the Akashic Records. But it's really, what I love about it is that it's like the sky is the limit. There's no limit to the kind of things that can come in that are supportive for you.
And do you have any examples of people that you've done a reading for and it's kind of changed their life in some way?
Yeah. Oh, this is so good. I was just talking about this other day. One of the things that we do in the Akashic Records is we work on something called soul contracts. Have you heard of this? Are you familiar with this term? Okay. Yep. So for listeners,
I was going to say, if you could describe it for the listeners.
Yeah. For listeners who aren't familiar, the soul contracts is this idea that before we come into our incarnation, before we come into physical form, we quite literally write contracts with other beings, with other energy fields. It could even be with like a job, or it could even be with animals, that you write these specific contracts of how you're going to interact with each other in order to elicit growth in your soul experience. And so a great example would be, you have a soul contract with your spouse. And your soul contract is that you're going to play these certain roles together in order for you to grow in certain ways in your experience on planet Earth. Well, what happens sometimes is we contract in for things that maybe when we get here to planet Earth, we actually don't want to fulfill upon. So, maybe you don't actually want to be in a 10-year abusive relationship because, before coming into incarnation, your soul was like, yeah, that'll be really great for my soul growth. I'll learn a lot from that. You get down here and, you're in a 2-year abusive relationship and you're like, I'm done with this. I don't want to do this anymore. You can actually go into the Akashic Records, locate that contract, and you can edit and update it so that it no longer reflects what you opted into before you came into your physical form. And so the reason I use this as an example is that I've done this with all kinds of different, varying degrees, from relationships. In fact, just did this yesterday for, husband and wife rewriting their soul contract together because they were not experiencing the kind of bliss and joy in their relationship that they want to. So we went in and we found the soul contract and we actually made some edits, had them both energetically sign, and then filed it back in the Akashic Records. So these are the types of things that you can see happen. And you would be amazed after you edit these or update these contracts, the kinds of things that will happen, people will get new job offers, they'll make more money, their relationships will improve. I've had women get pregnant. I mean, all kinds of things that can happen in relationship to just kind of editing the energy that you agreed to participate in planet Earth.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What I was thinking as you were describing that was more what the process is for you. Like how do you access the Akashic records? Do you need to be in like a specific meditative state or anything like that? What kind of process you have to go through, and what state perhaps do you need to be in?
Yeah, so my personal practice is I put myself in a blue tetrahedron. So an energetic blue tetrahedron. And for folks who don't know what that is, it's like a pyramid shape on the top and a pyramid shape on the bottom. So it's almost like a diamond shape, but it's actually a pyramid on both sides.
And is this a physical thing, or is it?
No, it's an energetic thing. So
Right.
I quite literally imagine putting myself in a blue tetrahedron. And for me, this was given to me by one of my teachers, who was given it by, I believe it was the blue avians, like the extraterrestrials, who said that if you actually enact this kind of energy form, you're highly protected. And so I kind of fooled with it, and I took that on as a practice, and I absolutely noticed a difference. So I put myself in that energy field just to protect myself from anything that might be going on with a client, or even just, in the energy field of the space I'm in. And then I use a prayer. And this was what I was referring to earlier. When they decide that you're a teacher, they give you a specific prayer. And I'd be happy to say it if you'd like.
Sure.
Would you like to hear
absolutely,
it? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. It's very beautiful. And this is what I was saying I channeled in the one straight shot. So let's just see. How about, I'm trying to see if we should open your records. Would you mind if I open your records?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, let's open it for you. Okay, so Leigh, so I have permission to open?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. From the north, south, east, and the west, as above, as below, may all angels, guides, seers, and the Great Spirit guide us in this journey. May our hearts be received and our visions be guided in light and love. May the deepest wisdom come forth for Leigh in this moment, and may he be supported by the ancients of all creation. The records are open with the greatest integrity to serve Leigh and all humankind. All is held in a stream of light and love. All is guided. All is protected. The records are now open. You are loved. Ooh, so we're in your records now. How does it feel?
Do you know what? It's really interesting. As you started speaking, it just felt like my heart just increased in size. Mm-hmm. That's what I felt.
Yes.
And a very nice feeling.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I love about the Akashic records is that by simply just being in the Akashic field, by just opening and entering that space, most people report that they just get like an energetic healing. And you do. There's almost just like this calm that comes into the body, and it's almost like a little bit of a central nervous system reset. Like everything just sort of drops a beat. And so it's really beautiful. Do you mind if I just see if there's anything they want to bring through for you?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have a son?
No.
Do you want a son?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Because there was just a boy spirit that came in right away, like very right away.
I was once told by a medium a few years back that I would have a child in my 50s, and I'm almost halfway through.
Okay. So. I mean, he came in like boom. So this is why I usually, when I open the Akashic records, I typically just see, like if there's someone almost like waiting at the door for you to let them in. And this boy spirit came in instantly. So I don't know, obviously the thing that I want to just say about that is that he's here and that he's totally open to being in your life and being a part of, and having that soul contract with you. And, if you've kind of like lost sight of that, or even like lost hope of that a little bit, not to lose that light and that hope. And quite honestly, it almost looks like there's a girl behind him a little bit. Like there could be two. And I think that that's just, what I'm getting is that your heart would love that, but you've almost kind of like lost sight of it a bit, or you're like, oh, I don't know if that's going to happen. Or like, I've sort of just, like let that go a little bit, which is fine. But this is almost just a reminder that that could still be a part of your experience if you wanted it to. And so to open your heart back to that and like, let that be a possibility again.
Wow. That's pretty interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah. And that the boy spirit came in super strong. So, and this is, I don't know why I don't consider myself like a spirit baby person, but a lot of times souls will come in with me. And this is something I experience quite regularly, but it feels like the thing is just about you reopening your heart to that possibility and just actually, not closing down on it, but just like reopening. And I think that if that's what you want, you always have the free will, but it feels like it's definitely a possibility for that to come through. And let me see. And then the only other thing I'm just seeing is that the woman, I'm just seeing a woman with brown hair, and it's almost like maybe you already know her. So there's
Very
that.
Interesting.
So there's that. I'll leave that at that. But yeah, it feels like all of that. And what I get is that, that experience of fatherhood, that experience would open you up even more in your soul expansion, and would give you aspects of yourself you've yet to discover, and that would be really, really beautiful for you. So do you have any questions or anything that you want me to look at?
I think you've just blown my mind enough, I think.
Well,
that's really interesting. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Yeah. Let's go ahead and close the records just so we can kind of close that out. I give thanks to the north, south, east, and the west, all the elements, tattvas, the great spirit, angels, and guides, guiding all with the hands of creation and love. May we be blessed and loved. May this reading close with the highest integrity to continue to serve and heal. And may all be held in a stream of light consciousness. Aho, the records are now closed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
I'll tell you more when we stop recording.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's quite like a vulnerable space, right? It's like somebody just, exposed you. You're like, oh, okay, hello, I'm out here. But I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you letting the audience tune into that, because I think what you can feel innately is just how beautiful the space is, and how sophisticated and intimate it can be. And it's one of the things I love about the Akashic Records is that it's just such a beautiful, intimate space to connect with people through. And it's almost like, for those of you out there who've done plant ceremonies or just any of these spaces that you put yourself in where you become more open, more open-hearted, more open-spirited. I feel like the Akashic Records is that way. And there's no intermediary required. Like, you don't need a plant, you don't need a psychedelic, you don't need anything. It's just you and you.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So you have an incredible event that's coming up in April called BeeFest. And could you share a little about this event and, why it's important to you?
Yes. So, we talked about all of the things kind of in our background, the strength and conditioning, the wellness, the sort of ancestral background we have with food and nourishment. And then obviously this kind of new branch into the mystic teachings. BeeFest is literally the event that encompasses all of this. And I think that what I love about it is that it's really an opportunity for us in the wellness space, for us in this world, to actually come into this environment, live it, and also celebrate it. And I think so many times, we've certainly for years, we've been running transformational retreats for over a decade, for 11 years now. And, most of the work in the initial phase of our sort of retreat space was about coming in. We'd work on strength and conditioning, we'd work on nutrition, we'd work. It was all about like, we're getting there, we're going to work. BeeFest is this event where we can actually honor and celebrate all the work we've done. Because I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast or you're like us, you've done a lot of work. Like we've been up to big things, really trying to support ourselves and really trying to become the embodiment of the practices and the teachings that we know are powerful for us. And so BeeFest is a place where you can come live it, celebrate it, and be with other people who are holding that level of attainment. And I think that being around other people, I always talk about the group aura, just being with other like-minded people, being with other people that share this similar ethos about life, it up-levels you without you even having to do anything, because you're just in, by exposure, by the nature of being with these other beings that are holding this kind of energy, you just get upgraded. And so this is what I love about BeeFest is like, you just show up and you have a massive upgrade and you don't even have to like work that hard. You just get to have fun. You get to enjoy it. So we have strength and conditioning components. We have breath work. We have Kundalini yoga. All of the meals are super high quality sourced meals. We worked with this particular resort in Playa Riviera, Mexico, and the owner has a very similar ethos as us. So he's just like absolutely meticulous about the sourcing. And then we call it BeeFest because, we bring in this sort of festival element. So at the end of each night, we have these really fun themes. So we have like, essentially like Burning Man style costume themes where, you come and dress up and, really just an opportunity to self-express. And then we have live performances from artists all around, from international artists all around the world. So for those of you who are familiar with like Porangi, he'll be performing. He'll also have his Music is Medicine workshop. So it's just this like culmination of everything we love. It's music, it's food, it's expression, it's art, it's, health and fitness. It's just everything that we love, all in this beautiful luxury location in Playa Riviera, Mexico.
Amazing. And you say you've been running retreats for 11 years, you say?
11 years, yeah.
And have you used this same venue before, or is it new?
So we haven't used this same venue before, but when we were scouting, so this will be our third BeeFest, and BeeFest is kind of like my soul baby. It's just like, I love it so much. It's just my commitment to bringing this beautiful experience to planet Earth. The first year we did it in the Redwoods in Northern California. Last year we did it in Zion, just outside Zion National Park. And then we wanted to do a beach experience and really go into that kind of jungle ocean energy. So we literally scoured the planet to find the perfect location for this kind of beach frequency. And when we found this location, it was like they built the place for us. It's just so perfect. Their ethos, the decor, just everything. It's like, honestly, it's like they made the place for us. So we're really, really excited about having it there. And we're already in talks about maybe having it there again because we're so excited about it.
So did your Akashic records help you find that place?
It's funny because I actually asked the Akashic records, and the thing I heard was they said, just keep looking, because we had been scouring, we doing all these things. And so I was sitting there and I was like, okay, keep looking. Where's somewhere that I haven't looked? I went into this Facebook group that I'm a member of, and I saw it's like a Facebook group for people who run retreats. And so a lot of people talk about different locations. And there was the post at the very, very top of it. And it said, this location wants to start hosting wellness retreats. I clicked on it and I got like, physical chills. I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is our spot. So in a way, yes, they did help me find it.
Awesome. So your Kundalini yoga and Akashic trainings brand is called Starseed Collective.
Yes.
Can you tell me what a starseed is and how that influences your work and your brand ethos?
Yes, starseeds. So the idea of starseeds, or kind of the definition of a starseed, is that there are certain souls who chose to reincarnate on planet Earth from other, extraterrestrial bodies or from other energy fields, but they specifically chose to come incarnate onto planet Earth to help raise the frequency, to actually help elevate the energy field of planet Earth into this, 4D, 5D and beyond level of energy. And so the way that I like to think about this is, some people truly identify, like they really feel that they are from a different planet, or they're from a different galaxy, or they really feel their extraterrestrial origin, so to speak. And that's awesome. I certainly can relate to that. And I've had very deep experiences about different extraterrestrials and my relationship to them. But the way that I like to think about it is that if you self-identify as somebody who's trying to help planet Earth, if you self-identify as someone who's trying to raise the energy field, then you're a starseed. And so whether you want to get, into the super crazy, reaches of an extraterrestrial experience or not, it's kind of like get in where you fit in. But to me, if you're here to help, then you're a starseed. And so Starseed Collective is about collecting those people, collecting that energy so that we can gather and we can unite and we can help one another to change the frequency here on planet Earth.
Wow. I guess I probably know quite a few starseeds then.
I think you might even be one, Leigh.
Yeah, I may well be.
If we're being honest here.
Yeah.
I have no doubt you know a lot of starseeds. And it can be difficult. They say a lot of times starseeds can struggle here on planet Earth because a lot of times we've come from other energy fields that are not quite so dense. They're not so intense and heavy. And so a lot of people, that identify as being a starseed, being on planet Earth can be tough. It can actually feel heavy, and starseeds even talk about depression or, just really suffering with the experience of planet Earth because it's very intense. And I think that's why I like this idea of Starseed Collective, because it's like, it can be intense. And if we're being honest, it's pretty intense for all of us right now, whether you think you're a starseed or not. Like what's going on Earth it's pretty intense. So it's this idea that we can unite, we can gather together, and we can help one another hold the energy and feel safer and feel more empowered in our Earth experience. And this is another reason why BeeFest is so important to me, is that I feel is that it's a literal, kind of vibration implant that we're giving planet Earth, like as these amazing humans and energies to come together and celebrate and emote that kind of frequency. I really believe that does change the energy field of planet Earth.
Yeah, certainly my experience of being around lots of starseeds, which I tend to do when I'm around a lot of other Czech trained professionals. Or it might be, when the Czech faculty get together, which we're hoping to again this year. If you do anything like Tai Chi or toning or meditation or drumming, anything like that in a group of those people, and it's just amplified 10, 100 times more than if you were doing it somewhere else.
So true. And honestly, I feel like, my husband and I have been running events for 11 years, and we say this all the time. We can see somebody transform 10, 20 years in one event. And as coaches, we understand, like, we could have worked with them as a client for 10 years to elicit the kind of change that happens in one event.
Yeah, I mean, it just reminded me of a time, I'm going back many years, maybe 20 plus years, and I was searching for new premises in London. And I went into this building, and the guy was showing me around the building. And I think it was the 3rd floor I was looking at. And he said, "Oh, let me just show you the yoga studio," which was on the ground floor. And he opened the door, and I walked in, and I just said, "Wow, there's like an amazing energy in this room." And he looked at me and he went, "Wow, you feel that too?" Like he'd never come across someone else that had ever felt that energy. So I can really relate to, you know, a lot of people getting together at that, you know, the kind of event that you're running, and just how amazing it would be for every person that's there.
It's just truly like, when I look at the timeline of my life and I think about the most joyous, most empowering experiences, these BeeFests certainly illuminate on the timeline. And everyone that gets the opportunity to experience it, you know, often it's just like this. They're a listener out there. It's the first time they've heard of us. They don't even really know, like they're not even really sure what the event is, but something inside of them is like, I'm meant to be there. They show up, and it's like, you know, time and time again, they've just reported like, this has been the most amazing experience of my life. Like, I feel so grateful I stumbled upon this, and that now I had this experience, and I cannot imagine my life having not had this experience. And, you know, it opens up a whole world, because now they're a part of this bigger community. They have opportunities. There's so many wonderful coaches and teachers and people that are on the site, you know, participating in this particular experience, that it usually takes you down a new path. And now you find a new teacher, a new coach, or you find a new client. I mean, it just opens up all of these miraculous doors. And just, you know, year after year, we've just heard like, wow, this all happened from BeeFest.
Yeah, it does sound like an absolutely amazing event.
So pretty awesome, Leigh. Wink, wink.
Yeah. So you turned 44 last year, and, you know, you've experienced a fair amount of life up to this point. What's most important to you now that you could share with our audience? If you're enjoying this podcast so far and want to watch the full unedited version, head on over to our Patreon channel at www.patreon.com/Radical Health Rebel, where you can support the podcast for as little as a takeaway coffee and receive lots of other premium content and discount offers. Thanks for watching.